Thank you so much, Tony, for that absolutely beautiful introduction to bringing us back into the Gaia journey. It is wonderful to be with you again. And it is wonderful to just see all of the different places and spaces that we're all coming in from. So thank you, Tony, for that beautiful beginning. My name is Antoinette, and I'm the host of the Gaia Journey. And part of an incredible team who has been holding the kind of the light of the Gaia journey over the last few months as we ended our session in July with a global forum. And now we begin with these co-initiation sessions that we are starting together from all of our little points of light all over the globe. That's how I like to think of us, at least. So a little more background that this is put together by the Presencing Institute, which invites us into being able to deal with change and disruption and have the methods and tools to be able to hold what's needed in our world in order to be able to really move towards the transition into the society and the world that we know is possible. And there are so many of us, so I just like to share a little bit of the countries and places that I'm seeing coming in: Rome, Germany, the United States, Italy, Uganda. I love seeing it in the chat. So if you are right now just coming in, then you can just type in your name, or not your name, but where you're coming from, because your name may already be there. And we are threading multiple Zoom rooms together. So we have over 330 people in this room, and we have other Zoom rooms that we're connected to. So just know that this community, as you see all of the different incredible places that we're all coming from, in a time where it is quite tricky to connect with each other in person, it is quite a bit of magic to have all of us being connected in this way today. And that really is the essence of the Gaia journey. It is not a course or a program. While we're moving through this journey together, we are really in a place of just holding this space for the change that's happening, for the disruption that's been happening. And we had been preparing for a global forum, and we then realized that it was actually going to be a global pandemic. And in that moment of figuring out that it was a global pandemic, we realized that this is the moment of disruption. And many of us said, this is the moment I was born for. And that is really the activation that we're holding. It wasn't just one moment, one Zoom call, or one moment in March, or April or May. It continues. And standing here, I'm in New York on Lenape land, in what is known as Cortlandt Manor. And in this place, we have been experiencing yet another disruption. 2020 feels like a year of uncertainty. And yet in the coming together, in the sensing into our global community and what is needed now, I feel a sense of, this is exactly what I'm here for. This is what I'm here on this planet to do, to sit with this uncertainty together and to step into the emerging future together. So I'm pleased to be here with all of you to do that. And I will pass it over to Eva Pomeroy, who will share a little bit of the findings from our March through July Gaia meetings, where we had 13,000 of you, of us, all coming together and really experiencing the sensing and possibility and many prototypes that started to come through. So Eva has been gathering the findings of our time together and will share more with us. Eva, over to you.
Thanks, Antoinette. And hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you, and for so many of you to see you again. I recognize lots of names in the chat, and it's lovely. So yes, just to bring in, as we co-initiate, a little bit from the research of the first part of the journey into the next part. As many of you know, the research team sort of accompanied the first leg of the journey, helping to see and sense the system through surveys and focus groups and our own sensing. There's a lot that came out of that. but there are a few things that feel like they're particularly relevant as we move into the next leg of the journey. So just to frame what I'm going to share, at the end of the 14 weeks, we asked people to kind of rate the impact of Gaia along different dimensions, like capacity to take different perspectives or clarifying intention. And there were shifts on all dimensions, but the thing that really stuck out most strongly was a shift in people's capacity to feel our global web of connectedness. Over 40% of people answering the survey said that changed significantly, and over half said it was life-changing, the impact. And so that's really a significant finding, a significant impact of Gaia journey. And so we've been trying to unpack that and understand what enabled that capacity and why it matters and what the effect of it is. And so there are a few points that I'd like to bring in today. The first is just the importance of coming together in a moment. And Antoinette just mentioned we find ourselves in another moment. But there was something about this moment that was experienced by people around the world to then be able to come together as a global community, bear witness together, and really hold that moment together. And I think that that's really nicely reflected in one of the comments that came from the survey that I'd like to share. At the start of Gaia, COVID had just hit, and the experience of being so together across the planet while alone in our dwellings was magnificent. I felt hope that our species could come together at a moment of urgency, and that this togetherness would create a path for the deep systemic transformation that we need everywhere. And then to have the George Floyd case rip racism open and have a place to learn about and discuss absencing helped push me forward in my own growth. And then a second comment from someone else. It is tapping into the pain and possibility at such scale globally that is making a difference. And so that real power of coming together in a moment. The second point is that it isn't just coming together that creates that sense of interconnectedness. Right? It's the way that we come together. So that sense isn't just sort of like a mental knowing, right, or construct, but rather it's something that's deeply felt and experienced. And we would talk about that as feeling the field, or even being the social field. So another reflection that I think helps kind of illustrate that is this one. Connecting with such a broad global collective of people passionate about real conscious change has added to my already strong commitment to leaning in. Experiencing so much authentic leadership calls me forward, emboldens me. Seeing and hearing people from all over the world gave me a sense of the global scale of this kind of engagement. My body, heart, mind is part of a large evolutionary movement of body, heart, minds. And this is super inspiring. I can take these Gaia relationships as a big, encouraging embrace from which to see, feel, and dare to act in service of all life. And the end part of that quote really touches on the final point, which is about the relationship between connecting to the whole, connecting to the social field, and then kind of personal individual action in one's own context. And this is an area I find personally really fascinating. And there's a lot to it, but I think one of the points that came up really strongly in the research was a sense of reframing your own individual actions or individual work from the context of a bigger whole. And I think that's really nicely reflected here by someone who shares, I now can see that having a global vision is crucial. An understanding of the principle of the oneness of humanity that is like the umbrella over everything we do. I also see how that vision can inform my local activities, starting with my own family and then in my own town. And so those are just a few of the points that came from that first leg of the Gaia journey that feel really just relevant as we co-initiate and move into the next part of the journey. And so with that, I hand back to you, Antoinette.
Eva, thank you so much. I got chills when I was hearing some of those quotes and just what it has meant to so many people who have been participating in this journey with us and just staying connected with each other and tuning into that global vision. And it reminds me of the astronaut video that we show in ULab. And ULab is another place where we can gather more methods and tools for this. And many of us have been gathering as a global community. Um, and in that video where we turn around and look at planet Earth, this little spinning planet, and know that that's where all of our lives play out, and to have a vision for that. Thank you for reminding us of what it takes, and for further framing of our current moment. I will turn it over to Otto Scharmer, who's the founder and chair of the Presencing Institute and a senior lecturer at MIT. Otto has been grounding us in what it means and really articulating what is needed now, but what it means to be present in this moment. So thank you, Otto, for giving us the articulation and the kind of connection to that global vision that Eva just mentioned. Over to you, Otto.
Thank you, Antoinette, and hello, everyone. It's good to see many familiar faces and also many not yet familiar. And it's good to be connected in this moment. And we will be hearing throughout the session voices from various regions in the world. But so this is globally, but also with particular respect to what's happening here in the United States, a particular moment in 2020. So I wanted to just set the stage with 5 observations on this week's election, so that we can use that as a lens and maybe also then apply to other regions and countries and situations represented in our collective experience here. Number one, the first thing to notice is, and one of the most important outcomes, I think, of this week's is what did not happen. So what we did not see is an army of 50,000 people that are watching the election proceedings that Trump called for. He called for it. People did not show up. What happened instead is over 140 million Americans showing up for the elections. And in a country that is deeply divided, Republicans and Democrats, thousands, tens of thousands, Republicans and Democrats working shoulder to shoulder to carry through the election process. That's what has been happening. Many were afraid of violence breaking out and moving into another period of unrest and civil war. That did not happen. So the way it feels is that the past 2 days were a microcosm of the past 4 years, which is the institutions of democracy bend but not break and are about to bounce back and bounce forward. Number 2, the country is still divided. 5 million more people in 2020 voted for President Trump than they did in 2016. More, apparently, we don't have firm numbers yet, but apparently more white people voted for Trump than voted for Biden. And more people of every group in America voted for Trump in 2020 than they did in 2016, which is shocking. Because you can understand the protest vote for an outcome, for an outlier who comes in, a disruptor, right? Anyone can relate to that. You want a disruption. But after those 4 years, seeing these numbers reminds us that we live in a country that is still deeply divided. And the divides are around race, around gender, generation, urban versus rural, and around identity. And the healing hasn't, and the addressing of the underlying trauma hasn't even started yet. 3, what's the best thing that happened from this week's outcome? I think one of the best things that has happened and clarified during this week is where the solution to all the pressing challenges that we face is not coming from, and that is from above. Whatever the solution is, if there ever is one, it's not descending onto us from the White House. It's not descending onto us from a deeply divided capital. It's not descending onto us from above. Either we get our own act together and make it happen, or it's not going to happen. I think that is a level of disillusionment and sense of reality that is refreshing and can be a foundation for next steps. Number 4, we don't know, but it may be later today, it may be later this week, it may be later this month. With Trump gone, Trumpism is still here to stay. So with the current occupant of the White House gone, it really means the real work is just kind of getting started right now, right? And in a recent blog, I tried to dissect that a little more. What are the underlying conditions, right? That because Trump, of course, or the current occupant of the White House, is just the symptom. That's not the real problem. The real problem are the underlying structures that generate these symptoms. And that's what we need to address. That's what we need to transform one way or another. So in that recent column that maybe we can also share in the follow-up to the session, so I framed that in terms of post-truth, post-democracy, and post-humanity. So those are the issues. Post-truth is, okay, we have a president who issued 25,000 lies in office, and still 5 million more people are voting for him, right? That's post-truth. 25,000 lies, does it hurt you? No, it does not. Post-democracy is architectures of separation. It's all the divisions that are deepening and are not healing. And post-humanity is really the politics of fueling fanaticism and fear. So the last point then is, how can we transform that? And I think to transform these conditions, we need to develop something that could be called transformation literacy. And what I mean with transformation literacy is the capacity to address disruption in a way that is sensing into and then stepping into the emerging future, that allows us to connect with and embody a future possibility that is possible now, but that will not come into being if we are not stepping up. And this transformation literacy really resides on 3 core capabilities: the capability of listening, of deep listening, listening with humility, which is really allowing us to transcend the condition of post-truth. It relies on co-sensing. It relies on on our ability to develop architectures of connection. And I think that's exactly why Eva's quotes were so illuminating in the beginning, because it is this, if we can feel the field, if we can sense the field, that actually allows us to move beyond these current bubbles and current divides that we collectively enact one way or another. And then the last one is action confidence, another capacity that Eva has been talking about. So with that, and that is really the deeper intention why we come together here. Now is the moment where we need to step up, because whatever happens as a result of this week, it means that the real work is just getting started now. And no one can do it alone. We can only do it together. That's why we are together here. And on that note, I want to turn it over and invite Arana Ayashi, who is a co-founder of the Presencing Institute. She's also a meditation teacher and a dancer, and the inventor of social presencing theater, which over the past decade has been one of the most significant innovations that came out of the Presencing Institute world. So Arana, thank you for joining us in this moment and sharing the gifts of your work with us.
Thank you so much, Otto. I'm so grateful to see everyone and to be here and to have a moment of awareness together, since we have a reflection from what Otto and Eva have shared of how important it is, our own sensing body and mind, how important these are. So if we could just take a few moments before we continue with our time together to tune into ourselves, really to just be able to be with whatever our experience is. And I will ask you, if you can, to just keep your feet on the floor, if you can, just sitting up in a dignified and relaxed human body shape, so that we can actually welcome whatever we're experiencing now. That this feeling quality of what it is to be you, this human being, right now, that is fully present. It's in your embodied presence. And it requires a little bit of suspending or letting go of what you think. It means to be loyal to this body that you live in and to the groundedness on our earth body. So please take a moment to feel your place on the Mother Earth body and to feel your own body, the shape of it, and that it is a living, breathing being. So we simplify for a moment. Whatever is whirling about in our mind, whatever it is that we feel, we let that settle down onto the ground. We take a moment to let our attention rest on this simple breathing body sitting on the earth. We feel the top of our head, which is open to the sky of possibility. And we feel that our body can join the sky and the earth, can join an open-mindedness, of intelligence and sanity. So just take a moment to begin feeling our attention resting in the body. With the simplicity of mind, letting our thoughts come and go without attaching to them. This is our ground right now. And then I invite you to just feel the heart. Whatever our heart feels like right now. Whether it's turbulent or full or numb or agitated, makes no difference. Just what does it feel like, this heart that both appreciates our life, is grateful for this moment where we can be together, grateful for our own health and the moments of beauty in our life. And really feeling this heart of sadness, the sense of brokenheartedness. Knowing that the pandemic has brought so much suffering to people, loss of life, loss of health, loss of income. That our social and racial inequality and violence is part of our heartfelt knowing that the political chaos, that we all feel this. We feel it in our heart. And we just let it be there. We let this human sadness of heart be the voice of our own compassion, our own love for this world, love for each other. And then please feel the back of the body, our strength, the spine, so flexible and yet so much strength. The resilience of the body and the resilience of our social body. All of us collectively make up the social body. And we know that the journeys of our ancestors, our teachers, our mentors, and their courage and their lives are living in us, are strengthening us, are cheering us forward. So we feel this genuine human heartedness And we feel the strength that we can, in fact, have the confidence in our own goodness and in the goodness of all beings. We can have some confidence that that goodness and that wisdom and sanity and care for this world is way stronger than all of the confusion and absencing and fixating on our difference. So please take this last moment and just be with a sense of open-mindedness, this humble listening that Otto referred to ourselves and to others. The open-heartedness of always remembering how much we actually, our actual capacity to love and care and to feel the compassion for suffering. And that we feel our own strength and the strength of our collective social body, the wisdom that lives in the social field. That moves us into toward the co-creation of the world that we want for our children and grandchildren and those to come. Thank you very much for taking this time to be human with one another.
Thank you so much, Arowana. Thank you. And thank you, Otto, as well, for giving us the framing to remind us what is needed to both. We will now move into hearing more voices from the field. So over the last few months, as we have been gathering, we have been really tuning into how we respond to this disruption or the many moments of disruption as we move towards societal renewal. And as we do that, there are moments where it feels like it might be easier to kind of turn away. And yet what's required of us is to turn towards and to really stay with what is happening. And Arowana just gave us an incredible tool to be able to do that. So as we move to our guests, we have Michelle and Dayani with us, who have been part of the GAIA community that has been building the global activation of intention and action. They have truly been embodying that. So first we'll bring in Michelle Ashen. And Michelle, and for both of you, the questions that we really have are, how are you responding to these moments of disruption? And how have you turned towards? What can you give us to inspire us all about how we do that together? And what do you sense in the current moment now? What are you sensing in your local field? I know that you both do so much work in your own communities. And what are you seeing in your local communities, and what are you sensing in the global social field as well? So first I'll turn it over to Michelle Ashen.
Thanks, Antoinette. So I think first off, I packed a bag of tissues, put fuel in my car, made sure I had enough data, and then I went out looking for communities in need that I had the skills and the resources to use in service of closing the divide. So I regularly go on sensing journeys to stay present to these moments of truth, as well as really understand for myself what this disruption has meant for different communities of people. You know, Theory U's opened my eyes to the divide, but more importantly, to my contribution to the divide. You know, it's encouraged me to really lean into those moments of disruption with this sense of hunger and a sense of urgency, and this lovely term that Otto and Eva coined, action confidence, to contribute to results I do want to see. I mean, at one point I was on a Zoom call almost every single day, meeting new people who were doing different things, from clinical scientists to statisticians to management consultants. I mean, I had a sense of what was happening in my world, but I also wanted to sense into what was happening in the rest of the world. I mean, in my day job in financial services and risk management in South Africa, I've taken the time to speak to various stakeholders, from insurance clients and trauma to service providers across the value chain. And then in my personal capacity as a professional coach and mentor to entrepreneurs, I've done the same thing. And it's really opened my eyes to the collective trauma and the shadows we walk with that are, in fact, for me at least, these barriers to change. You know, leaning into these moments of disruption has really been a very conscious choice for me. I didn't want to look the other way. It's like once you've seen the divide, there's a moral duty to no longer look the other way. So in as much as I choose fear, I've also chosen courage over comfort in walking through the landmines across my country and my continent. I think in terms of how I've turned towards the disruption, you know, Arawana just introduced us into such a beautiful experience with meditation, and it's been such a powerful tool for me to reflect on what's resonated with me in my discussions and in my experiences. Drawing has helped me to create visions of what I see, and then it's been an aid to get into conversation and discussions with other people removed or perhaps distant to that which I've been intentional to really get closer to. In terms of what I'm sensing in the current moment now, from a local perspective, you know, there are increasing pockets of communities that are waking up and seeing the reality for what it is. And there's some momentum gathering, and, you know, I wish for a little bit more, but just grateful for global communities such as these, where this is one of the activation of self and action. I mean, it's seen, it's valued, and it's supported unreservedly, which I'm so grateful for. And then from a global perspective, multilateralism at its best is in action in this community. I mean, one of my Solidarity Circle members, Kenny To from Singapore, he volunteered his time and his personal story to support the mental health of South Africans during these challenging times. I'm sensing that our traumas, individual and collective, are shadows that are keeping us in denial. We're blaming others, and we're actually destroying that which we love the most. I sense that we think it's easier to leave the work for others to do, as opposed to rolling up our sleeves and getting our hands dirty. I sense that there is a lot of fear and disbelief that anything I say or do can actually make a difference. I sense that we think the problem is bigger than us and actually not ours to solve. I sense that maybe it's easier to be absent than to actually be present. But there's hope that when we are intentional about having these experiences to engage and be curious about others and with others, that actually we find like-minded individuals who can support the action confidence needed to create a different reality. I mean, we keep repeating the same mistakes and thinking things will change, but surely, for me at least, this is insanity. So I'm encouraged that when action confidence leads my thinking and being, that I'm actually met with the heart of another who sees what I sees and also wants to find his or her place and contribution in the world. For me, sensing activates, you know, I'm alive to my contribution in the world. I'm alive to what my community and my country and my continent needs. And despite the challenges, a friend told me recently that sometimes it feels like climbing up a steep hill barefoot. And yeah, sometimes it does feel like, but that's That's where I say join a solidarity circle. Unfortunately, 33 is all mine. But this is the place, this is the home, this is the container. We need to affect change. You know, there is an awakening and there's some momentum, and we need to find that momentum in our communities and join forces to scale impact. It's comforting to know that there are people who think like us. We just need to find them. They're showing up more and more, and that gets me excited, gets me hopeful, and gets me really optimistic. And that's my share.
Michelle, thank you so much for reminding us how we choose courage over comfort and the tools that we need to be able to do that. Really just such a powerful reminder, and to hear your story from South Africa is incredibly important. And now I will send it over to Diane Centeno Torres, who will be sharing with us her story from Puerto Rico, and as a leader of GAIA Espanol, who, you know, they've been a community that is really galvanizing Latin America. And Diane, you sit and kind of straddle in Puerto Rico these two cultures and or many cultures and communities that are coming together. So and the incredible, you know, work that you do in communications and with your organization, Voz Activa. What do you see happening? How are you responding to the disruption? And what are you sensing on the ground in your local community and in this global social field?
Thank you all. I also I'm very grateful for the concept of this activation of intention and action that we've been hearing from the last couple of weeks. I work mainly with communities, so my experience might be a little bit different. We did have elections this Tuesday also. What I've been doing the last couple of weeks, I inserted myself in a conversation that I usually do not participate in related to elections, not with political education, but with voters activation. And it was really interesting to see the reaction of people that do not think or feel like I do, but that they were aware that I was trying to protect their rights, because their rights are as valuable as mine. So I'm seeing an opportunity for a deeper listening and sensing exercise that we have to do. And it's interesting because of the results that we still don't have for the elections. A lot of people who are working for rights and for change are very depressed. I have a very, very dear friend in the US who cried so much last night. And she said, what happened? What happened? And I was telling her, well, we didn't listen enough. We need to listen deeper to what's going on out there and listen to people who feel differently or think differently, and feel the complexity of that. What comes from opportunity, what comes from opportunism, or what comes from oppression, but what comes from fear, or what comes from lessons passed from generation to generation. So we cannot keep on thinking that people that from left or right are monoliths. So it's really difficult, because when we think about we want change and we want opportunities, of course we think of people who have been oppressed for so long, and then we have these figures up here that are the oppressors, but in between are a lot of levels, and it's really complex. So my work is in communities with people who have no college education, and so I need to listen to why they feel that some people should not do this type of thing, or why other people might be a menace to my culture or my convictions or my beliefs. I have to listen to that. I don't have to accept it, But I need to listen, so there might be a conversation moving forward. And it's been very interesting to be aware of labels and trying not to use them, and trying to say, okay, there's some things that are facts that can be checked, and we can have conversations on that. And there are things that are beliefs and customs or are part of your culture, and we have to talk about that in a different level. And we need to do that, and it's hard work. Sorry to say that, but it's hard work, but we need to do it. In terms of what I'm sensing in the current moment, I see a lot of people realizing that it's very complex, and that's good. Because if you are aware of the complexity of that conversation, then you are getting ready to have the conversation. When you think that change is fast and we're going to solve everything and everyone's going to be very happy and we're going to hold our hands together, and well, that's not going to happen if you don't do the hard work. So I'm very happy to see, well, maybe not happy, but it's good to know that people are realizing, okay, this is more complex than we thought. So let's get to it so we can do the work together.
Diane, thank you. And just hearing the, from this kind of emotional holding space that you're holding with listening to your friends, and just kind of, and then also the deep listening to the community. We carry these different levels of listening, and we've talked a lot about that in ULab and a number of spaces in Gaia, but just to drop into these deeper levels of listening and the work it takes to do that, but also the simplicity. It's like, we know how to do this. So to invite us into a deeper sense of listening, we will have Tony come back and join us with an improvisation based on what he has been hearing over the last 47 minutes and more in the Gaia journey. So over to you, Tony. Tony. I feel like just dropping in over the last 45 minutes to almost an hour, I feel like I'm just the different parts of my senses are being activated, and to have this voice come in to allow us to sense into the field is just magic. Thank you. We will now move into the absolute best part of the Gaia journey, which is when we get to connect with each other. So much of what we've been doing is listening to the voices from the field, listening to the framing of our conversation. And so much of what we've been hearing in our news media, in the places that we get our general information, is a kind of potentially a single story, maybe a couple of stories. And now we actually get to sense into what is going on in these different parts of the world through the voices of us, through the voices of all the people holding this light in all of these different places around the world. So we will turn to each other and we will practice this deep listening to build the architectures of connection and the social field that Otto and Eva and many others shared, and that Arowana kind of dropped us into. And Tony and Michelle and Dayani, thank you. So we will now ask all of us the same questions. What is the disruption that you've been seeing? So we'll put the questions in the chat, and really, how have you responded to these moments of disruption? How have you turned towards the disruption? And I know that many of us, we turn towards, we turn away, we turn towards again. So it happens. And, just where are you now? How have you been turning towards? And, how have you been responding to those moments of disruption? And what do you sense in the current moment now? Perhaps in your local community and in the global social field? And just really tuning into each other, dropping into a place of deep listening. I often say that we don't know what each other had for breakfast, let alone our life experiences that we may be bringing to these conversations. So really just making space and seeing each other the best possible way that we can, and just holding each other in our aspiration together for our common humanity. So enjoy your time together. We'll be in for just about 18 minutes. And we will just attempt to give everybody a few minutes of a chance to speak and to hear each other. So enjoy your time together. I look forward to seeing you back here in just over 15 minutes.
Looks like she has a beautiful home. Look at that fireplace.
She does. She does.
I just invite you into the living room.
I'm not ending up in a breakout room, Antoinette, yet.
I see that we are
So for everyone who stayed with us in the main room, you're very welcome to just stay with us and to enjoy Rachel's scribing so far. And maybe feel free to also write something in the chat. We know that not everyone has the space to speak, but maybe you can share some of your thoughts in the chat. That would be nice. So we'll come back in something like 15 minutes.
Hello. Am I in a group or a breakout group or not? Because I've lost my connection. Maybe
Oh,
somebody
you
can.
are in the main room and we're all coming back in 4 minutes.
All right. Okay.
Enjoy
Oh,
the drawing.
yeah, I will. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. There is a welcome from the dog as well. So warm welcome to everybody, and just really feeling into what we just had in our breakouts was so my breakout was very powerful. So perhaps we just take a breath together and just come back to ourselves and see what's landing for us. So if you'd like to put one hand on the chest and one hand on the belly, maybe that's something that helps me just lands here. So you can put, one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, if that feels good, and just breathe completely out, exhale everything out. And then fill the belly, fill the chest and the collarbones with the inhale. And exhaling out completely. Just noticing what from your breakout you're holding, what spark of conversation just really is landing with you. And when you're ready, you can type directly in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And the hand raise function is if you click on participants and click on the little blue hand, we can bring your voice and video across. And for right now, I will also read out some of the comments as we put them in the chat. So please share with us what is coming up for you and what you're sensing in the field that you just, someone in our group called it the little slices of our larger social field. So what you were sensing into. So we have Luciana. I'm gonna bring you in so you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'll be short, but one thing that stays with me in my group is that there was one other person who's feeling exactly like me, that young people in Europe at the moment are beginning to shift and change, and it touched me because that's also my experience, and I really feel, it's hopeful with that. And I also want to thank, I see Simone França. I realized today that the GAIA Hub in the Netherlands brought me a lot. So that was also really useful to realize again. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, and for just bringing in our team members. There's so many wonderful team members around the world who have been making the Gaia journey possible. So Anne, we'll bring you in next. Anne, can you unmute yourself? You have your hand raised. There you go.
So I'd really just like to say thanks and just the amazing opportunity to share with people from around the world, especially during the time of COVID. I live in a very kind of rural area. I don't see any neighbors from where I live. And so the ability to actually connect and see people and talk with people, especially people that are wanting to make a difference. So thank you to that.
Thank you, Anne. And I'm just so touched by some of the, from the chats that are coming in, just the wide range of responses, being in painful places, the complex bearing witness, and the deep listening, consciousness, really the desire to understand the fears and yearnings of the people behind beliefs and actions. So there's a lot coming up, and I encourage more in the chat. So I see we have, is Gray just, Gary, sorry.
Great. Hey, Antoinette. I want to say, well, first I want to say it's my birthday, and I was so happy that you were doing the second Gaia thing on my birthday. So I'm really happy to be here. I want to say that what I'm sensing in these days, I'm living now in Madison, Wisconsin, but I'm from Bolivia. And it's actually, it gives me this feeling of tenderness, but also openness and beauty in a way, is to lean with more honesty to the truth that we have always been, we will be, and we are harvest of our past, soil for the present, and seeds for this future, for the future that we create. And just engage what happens in this week here with voting from that wisdom, and allowing that to open up and break open my heart and my mind so that we don't break apart, and sit in that truth and be from that truth. And I think this space has seeded that for me. And that's what I wanted to come back today and say thank you. And this is just the beginning. And it's so exciting that it exists, and that we are, and that we always were, and we will always be.
Thank you, and happy birthday. It's wonderful that you got to join on your birthday as well. And just fully with that sentiment of this is the beginning. It's a beginning again and again. And yet, you know, this moment, November today, and we'll be back together on December 3rd. This is a kind of co-initiating, you know, so just coming together and reminding ourselves and each other that we're here, and that this moment continues, that the moment of disruption continues, both with the elections, as we heard, and also with the next waves of this pandemic that we're feeling. So there's much that we're having come at us, but there's also so much that we have, and we're coming together. So thank you for that reminder as well. And I'll send it over to Terry Light. I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly.
You got it right. Latin for wind. I just wanted to say that one of the biggest things that's changed for me is I've started meditating regularly, and I've been following Reverend Kyoto Williams, who wrote the book Radical Dharma, and it's really, really powerful. I'm not Black, but it comes in Black Lives Matter. But I have been somebody who's been following presidency since 2014, but I was homeless when I started this course, been learning, and it was like applying listening everywhere because nobody could hear my story. My story is too much for everybody. So I'm just like building capacity for listening by listening. Does that make any sense? You know, like really trying to understand where people are at, who have money, who have wealth, who have capacity to help someone, but they don't have an inner capacity. The inner capacity of having a heart. And what's really helped for me is embodiment work, helping people connect to their bodies because they're so disconnected from our bodies. And I turn my bulb in energy on my body by putting barefoot out on the soil because that is real. That's alive. That's my mother. And it's absolutely the thing we need to do is go talk to our mother, and the mother will help us stop fighting because we're all her children. That's all I want to say. And a shout out to Reverend. She has a movie that's made by a Netherlands director called Resilience. If you can find that movie, it's really amazing. Talk about interconnected spirituality and talking about what we need to repair. And the Poor People's Campaign. So all talking about shift, what the shift has to be. Well, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing your voice in, and know that your voice is heard. So thank you for continuing to show up and for listening so that we can all listen. It does make sense, and it does open something up for all of us. So thank you. Abby, I see your hand as well.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Antoinette. Good to see you again. In our breakout group, the disruption we had all in mind in common was the disruption caused by COVID, and how we responded, how we leaned towards it. It's like, it was a moment of forced pause for us to stop. And then how we used that forced pause for some of us started by repairing himself. He used the word, I had to repair myself first, and also reinvent ourselves or build new connections. Like Gaia was a perfect example of, we had to be physically inside the house, but our connection really expanded globally through Gaia. And Gaia really activated new intention in me. And I felt that from other members in the group. It helped discover something new in us, and we really feel the shift is happening. We didn't have time to share the answer to the last question, but what I feel personally is that I'm sensing the force of absencing side is so strong now. And that gives us even more reason that we have to do work more on the side of the presencing, so that we will not be, pulled away towards the absencing side. So this kind of dialogue is really important. Thank you for holding this place. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing with Gaia and in the Philippines and with the Japan Gaia track. So thank you for bringing your voice in today as well. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Rachel. Although I do want to hear from everybody, I just know that we're coming towards the top of our time together. And Rachel has been scribing for us, and it would be lovely to do a resonance practice together. So Rachel, if you would like to say anything and share your screen so that we can reflect on what you have been reflecting on from what you've heard today.
Thank you, Antoinette. I'm activating my screen. There we go. Actually, I'm too deep into this to actually say anything right now. If you don't mind, so I'll just. Thank you, Antoinette.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for this image. And just as we sit together and look at this image, we'll take a moment of stillness just to be with it, just to be with the image of what we're seeing, sensing, and feeling in this moment as we reflect on the image that Rachel has been capturing throughout our conversation together. As we continue to focus in on the image, we can use the prompts, the words I see, I sense, or I feel, to type directly into the chat. I see, I sense, or I feel. I see darkness, and I sense it is okay to be in the darkness. I see a healing movement towards to connecting back to our inner selves. I see global movement. I see the real work more clearly. I sense a new beginning. I see expansion. I see many strands of light coming together in a big river. I see turmoil and disruption and discomfort. I sense fear and hope. I feel the movement of life struggling toward coherence. I see a space holding the disruption. I sense aliveness ready to break the old patterns. I sense the growth in my state of disruption. I feel we will heal this by coming together, repairing a wound. I feel movement. I sense something is opening. I see us. I sense the opportunity of profound transformation. I sense new life. Thank you all. Thank you, Rachel. And I'd like to ask if Otto has any final words for us before we close officially. Can't see him yet, but let's see.
So just, you know, what's when I looked at the image, that what stood out for me is the turning towards and the coming together around that. And what resonated in particular also in our breakout group was Diane's notion of it's complex. And what makes me feel actually confident in this session is that I sense we are in a process of embracing that widened and deepened complexity that we deal with. And it brings back to my memory something Dana said in another GAIA session earlier this year, where she said, you really need to hold the gaze steady onto the situation. So that's the skill we need to practice, we need to cultivate. Not, oh, this is a problem, I need to turn my attention some other way. No, we need to hold. So the moment, so what we are seeing is we are looking into the collective mirror. That's the situation that we face. And we in the earlier the last GAIA session really was about, I think, the seeing the capacity of holding the gaze steady when we look into the mirror of the collective, when we begin to see our own shadows, kind of when we see kind of how we collectively enact something that we don't want to see. And holding the gaze onto that and seeing our shadow as a source for transformation, not as a problem that we want to avoid, but it's a source where we become aware and it can turn into a source of transformation. I think that's where in this session I feel some resonance with, and that makes me feel confident that this can be the beginning of a much longer journey, that where we practice that skill and where we also then answer the other question that came up in my breakout group, which is, okay, I sense all that, I sense that possibility, but where's my own agency and where's our collective agency? That's really where my question is. And I think that's a very, very critical question, because that's exactly the situation we face today in many of our communities on a collective level.
Otto, thank you. I really thank you for that closing remarks and the framing. And just thank you to everybody for coming back together, and for any of you who may be joining for the first time, you are you're now part of the community and part of this journey together. And this is the co-initiation moment. This is the moment that we come together and we, carry forward. So we will be coming back together at 8 p.m. Eastern. For some of us, that will be evening. For some of us, that will be morning. We'll be hearing more voices from the field. You are welcome to come back or to share it with friends should you be sleeping or otherwise. And that we will continue the conversation through #GaiaJourney. For those of you who are already in macro hubs and thinking about the question of where is my agency, if you have interest areas, you can join there. If you're interested in learning more about the Presencing Institute programs, there's U Academy and many programs coming up with that, which are incredibly powerful, holding spaces to keep building these methods and tools. And if you were not part of those first 14 weeks, the essentials of those 14 weeks are up on the GaiaJourney.org site, and that will be shared in the chat. So the GaiaJourney.org site is holding all of the essentials and the macro hubs and ways to stay connected with each other. And we'll be sharing more information through email. I look forward to seeing you all again on December 3rd. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who joined. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our incredible team. And let us continue holding this journey together. See you again soon. We can all unmute and say goodbye.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Bye. Everyone.
Thank you.
With you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
everybody.
Gracias.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Gracias.
Bye.
Gracias.
So happy. Bye.
Bye.
Gracias. Hasta la vista.
Thank you. Hasta la vista.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Ciao.
Buenos días.